Hi everyone, I'm just going to share this document. I'm going to read it. It's really important. Please share the information, and I'll leave a couple of links in I'll leave a couple of links under this video that I couldn't include in WordPress because they just wouldn't upload the PDF documents, so I think WordPress has a problem with uploading those. Addressing the trials and tribulations of COVID-19. On behalf of myself and fellow citizens, in response to Mr Johnson PM's coronavirus bill, and in address to UK legal, political and medical professionals within both NHS and privatised healthcare, it is imperative that the issue of language, professional terminology and law are clarified in relation to aforementioned bill, as well as taking into account a variety of extremely important factors. Considering that among numerous other concerns, the coronavirus bill grants police and state powers at worst to remove a child from the family home on strength of being deemed at risk or else testing positive for a coronavirus, to place child into isolation with no legal representation and devoid of contact with family, that child may die via medical error and or forced experimental treatments with no investigations or inquest into the resulting death, no liability on part of the healthcare provider, and child's cadaver cremated minus knowledge or consent from the family. Without doubt, the bill is far more terrifying and potentially deadly than the threat via COVID-19. The golden rule of law prohibits any such absurdity whereby the application of a Government House of Commons bill published while Parliament is prorogued on strength of a pandemic lockdown poses a more serious and, as threatened in the bill, indefinite risk to the populace than the disease that bill is allegedly devised to inhibit. Coronavirus bill link here. The Bernician's presentation, in layman's terms, see link below, exposes the full scope of how this bill could or will be legally enforced, applied, interpreted and experienced. Stalin himself could have written it. Since Michael of Bernicia has devoted his life to studying and applying the law with success in UK courts and on behalf of defending his fellow citizens' homes, his interpretation is received as from a trusted source who understands very well how laws can and are regularly and legally exploited to provide room for crime and abuses of power which heavily infringe on citizens' legal and human rights. Confusion begins with the curious title, Coronavirus Bill. Coronavirus is a medical term related to all strains of colds and flu viruses, due to the corona-style spikes, which are the common feature of those. According to the letter of the law, the bill's title and content strongly implies that anybody testing positive for any strain of coronavirus would be considered either sick with and or transmitting COVID-19. Notably, on page 5 of said bill, section 8, line 25, it is stated, coronavirus means severe acute respiratory syndrome, coronavirus 2. This is a blatant falsehood in light of the medical and therefore legal definition of what a coronavirus actually signifies, i.e. COVID-19 or any one of a variety of coronavirus strains of flu and colds, among which COVID-19 is merely included. On page 20 the document states, suspension of requirement to hold inquest with jury, England and Wales, for the purposes of section (2)(c) of the Coroners and Justice Act 2009, requirement for inquest to be held with jury if senior coroner has reason to suspect death was caused by a notifiable disease. COVID-19 is not a notifiable disease. This again is a blatant falsehood, since COVID-19 is listed as a notifiable disease. At 6:15 p.m. on 5th of March 2020, a statutory instrument was made into law that adds COVID-19 to the list of notifiable diseases and SARS-CoV-2 to the list of notifiable causative agents. And we have the document here. There it is. Okay. Is the aforementioned statement on inquest evidence that the bill was written prior to COVID-19 being publicly recognised as a pandemic? If so, how could it be possible, being as Johnson PM held the position that COVID-19 was not a pandemic and his preferred action was to let it run through the herd? Indeed, is it feasible that a bill of such magnitude was compiled in just a matter of weeks? Or else is the blatant slapdash terminology evidence of a rush job? Can a whole nation be rendered subject to the point of enslavement to the dictates of any such hastily produced, literally ambiguous and factually incorrect HC bill? Since COVID-19 is now a notifiable disease, the aforementioned paragraph on page 20 is lawfully ambiguous or even entirely false, according to the letter of the law, in association with the principles of the golden rule of law. That entire paragraph is rendered absurd because a lawful fact is legally defined as false, and since this fact relates to UK citizens' lawful rights to justice and their human rights, again the golden rule does apply in regard to legal wording and in its broader application. Justice and human rights are foundations of public policy. The above UK government document link, as issued to UK GPs, which I've just shown, does also clarify one aspect of aforementioned section on page 25 of the coronavirus bill, i.e. severe acute respiratory syndrome, coronavirus 2, as notifiable causative agent of COVID-19. And there it is. COVID-19 and SARS-CoV-2 to the list of notifiable causative agents. Essentially, the bill states that coronavirus equals SARS-CoV-2 equals COVID-19. The above interpretation of terminology is then confirmed in the government PDF Crown Copyright 2015 List of Reportable Diseases to be notified to health protection teams by prison and other detention healthcare centre teams. Second on that list reads COVID-19 SARS-CoV-2, and this is the document which I could not upload onto WordPress, but you can see this is the URL for it. March 2015 final PDF. This is the Crown Copyright 2015, published March 2015. List of reportable diseases to be notified to health protection teams. What do we have here? COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2. Nowhere on the document does it say it's been updated. Okay. One then wonders how it is possible that COVID-19 could be listed in a UK government PDF published March 2015. On questioning, government response is that the document was recently updated. However, on closer inspection, the URL states very clearly at the end, March 2015 final PDF. Furthermore, any alterations to government published Crown copyright documents are legally required to make mention of that, and the copyright updated to, i.e. 2nd edition March 2020. If indeed, as it seems most likely, the document has been re-edited with failure to include the legally required copyright date. This reflects an appalling level of legal incompetence, which in turn does not instill confidence in the government and its ability to enact a new bill, and especially a bill which effectively strips every UK citizen of all their human and legal rights. Livestock on farms have more rights. The farmer is liable to prosecution should he treat his livestock cruelly, such as, e.g., leaving them to starve. In contrast, Mr Johnson PM's government produced 2 documents in 2019 stating, "The government feels no legal responsibility for securing food supplies in an emergency, neither fire, flood, disease, epidemic, conflict, supply chain disruption, or no deal Brexit." And this is the link. You know, we're talking about government documents, and here it is. There you go. No duty to secure food supplies. 2 official documents. Okay. While it may be argued that a farmer may legitimately be compelled to leave his or her livestock to starve during an emergency or crisis, a human population with rights in a democracy and who are not property of a landowner as stock/slaves, have a government in place precisely to be prepared for emergencies. Why else do people bother electing a government or pay their taxes, if not for the purpose of assuring their own collective welfare and national security? How can UK citizens trust a government which first claims there's no risk of a pandemic and then, after a flurry of media-led public pressure, agrees to a lockdown just at the point UK Imperial College has stated they have vastly overestimated the impact of COVID-19, and then, in a matter of weeks, produces this draconian, legally shoddy and dubiously titled coronavirus bill amid a global financial meltdown and while issuing threats of martial law because a minority of the public are, e.g., going out to buy non-essential items when, during a lockdown, items such as paints and paper may be a necessity for psychological welfare via art therapy to help relieve the prevailing stress of fear and uncertainty. Given the government allegedly took steps to include COVID-19 in the list of notifiable diseases for the 2015 directives for prisons and detention centres, it is remiss they chose to update the 2015 PDF and not the 2016 PDF, which was re-edited in 2017 and thus is titled Second Edition, with Crown copyright updated too, and every page carrying the original heading from 2016. Why update 2015 and not 2017? And this is the 2017 document, and as you can see, it's second edition, copyright 2017, and as you can see, it says here 2016 multi-agency plan for the management of outbreaks, communicable diseases or other health protection incidents, England 2016. That was the original date it was published. Apparently they updated it in 2017, and you know, you scroll down to the notifiable diseases and there is no COVID-19 mentioned in here. Okay, official list of notifiable reportable diseases, no mention of COVID-19. Why didn't they update that? If you're going to go back to update your documents, because this is the most recent one for prisons, okay, and secure the detention centres, like immigration, you know, illegal immigrant centres and stuff. So, you know, why did they update this to include COVID-19 and not leave any trace of it, not even on the URL, but they don't bother to update the 2017 one. It really does not make any sense whatsoever. At least it tells me that we're dealing with the government that really just couldn't care less. Just couldn't care less about anything at all. They've got an agenda and it's just slapdash, 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 and taking away all our rights. Clearly the government had to pass a law to update the 2010 directives for GPs, as indeed again it says here, this change in law requires GPs to report all cases of COVID-19. This change was made by adding them to Health Protection Notification Regulations 2010. So, you know, where's the law for the prisons and detention centres then? Why haven't we got a government document for that? This level of confusion via official documents citing legal directives and duties for public servants within government institutions such as NHS, police forces, prisons, etc. not only fails to inspire public confidence, it fosters a strong sense of national insecurity and now terror even among the populace, as we absorb the dreadful implications of Johnson's coronavirus bill with its myriad loopholes and open invitations for immense abuses of power. The coronavirus bill is quite literally an abomination, a blatant power grab via callous exploitation of an alleged pandemic. Alleged is the only term that can reasonably apply in light of Imperial College updated recommendations and equally the present coronavirus mortality rate being at present statistically lower than in previous years and nowhere near the peaks of 1996, 1999, 2000 to 2002 and 2014 to 15. How did the NHS cope during the winter of 2014 to 15 with a death rate of 43,900 and many thousands more hospitalised in the space of 4 months? And, you know, there's the graph, there's the BBC link in red there, and you can see the graph. You can see that we're talking excess winter deaths. So these are deaths on top of the regular 20,000 deaths that happen through other causes than flu. Or even with flu. At any given time over a winter period, 20,000 people die. But you can see from the graph here, excess winter deaths. Nearly 50,000 in 1996. Another near 50,000 in 2000 and another 50,000 in 2001. Over 30,000 in 2009, 8 or 9. And then 2014 to 15 was actually slight, even though it was so high, 43,000, it was still lower than 1996 and 2000 and 2001. Now, have we had 43,900 deaths? When did the BBC decide to tell us about it? 8 months later, November 2015. Why do we need makeshift isolation centre hospitals erected all over the country? Why are the public being asked to protect the NHS, presumably by not getting sick, when the NHS exists precisely to treat the sick? Is it because the NHS has been so badly decimated under 10 years of Tory governance, and having lost thousands of professional staff via Brexit, they can no longer cope with an average flu season? Did UK government not consider the impacts on NHS when they implemented national austerity and decided to push for Brexit? Is COVID-19 a pandemic because it threatens the lives of many UK citizens, or because after a decade of Tory attack Britain's NHS is no longer fit for purpose. Members of the public are alarmed to learn that NHS staff are being asked by UK government to record coronavirus as cause of death for all patients who were tested positive for a coronavirus, regardless of whether a coronavirus had in fact caused the death, i.e. a patient who dies of kidney failure but testing positive for a coronavirus is added to the list of coronavirus deaths, and then in turn the government then adds that death to the national statistics citing COVID-19 fatalities, and then using the bumped up figures to implement powers of said bill indefinitely. Certainly, Dr. Deborah Birx has openly admitted at a recent USA White House press conference, if someone dies with COVID-19, we're counting that as a COVID-19, and I've posted the video here, which was provided by Matt Walsh on his Twitter, and it was brought to my attention through Ryan on Last American Vagabond, and I'll leave you his video under this link as well, that he shares this, and I do advise you to watch it. Are UK medics testing specifically for COVID-19 or simply for evidence of any coronavirus? How can we collect reliable data for purpose of assessing the true risk and nature of infection, spread and mortality rates if the data collected is inaccurate and based on assumptions? The Tory government, now headed by Mr Johnson PM, appears to have lost sight of their professional and ethical duty of care to the democratic citizenship, and have decided that lack of a written constitution means Britain's constitutional norms, citizens' rights, democracy and legal duties of historical and present-day precedents can be casually ignored. It may be that as a direct result of this dire risk, as now exposed via Johnson PM's coronavirus bill, the UK populace have a legal and democratic duty to lawfully insist that UK Parliament commits to producing a written constitution. Trust in the traditional system is now broken. For the purpose of restoring trust, and with it a sense of balance and rational approach, it is beholden on legal, political and medical professionals to speak out, to ask questions, to provide evidence towards supporting a vastly more politically, legally and medically humane approach. Sugar, for example, is known to dramatically inhibit immunity. In the 1970s, Dr. Linus Pauling, one of the greatest researchers in the field of microbiology, discovered that vitamin C helps the body to combat the common cold, and as part of the same research, Dr. Pauling found that sugar severely slows down the same process. In fact, at a blood sugar level of 120, the white blood cell's ability to absorb and destroy viruses and bacteria is reduced by 75%. This blood sugar level would be easily obtained by any normal person eating some sugar, cake, cookies, candy, soda, or even drinking fruit juice. Further, it can take 4 to 6 hours for the vitamin C concentration in the white blood cells to reach that optimum 50 times concentration again. And here it is, the sugar link. There you go. I mean, basically, your white blood cells engulf the virus. The vitamin C inside the white blood cell kills the virus or weakens it at the very least. Okay? But if you eat sugar, your white blood cell, instead of vitamin C, it's going to be full of sugar, and that sugar will feed the virus, and then the virus will get stronger and attack you from inside. That's the reality of it. Okay? That is the reality of it. If you want to protect yourself from viruses, stop eating sugar. Stop eating it. Naturally, a corporate world addicted to profits from sugar and all of the products which include sugar would not welcome strict limitations or a temporary, even indefinite ban on sugar. Far better instead to lock people in their homes, ruin millions of small businesses, inflict major unemployment, and roll out a coronavirus bill to enforce mandatory isolation, callous or even fatal treatments, experiments, and, in that same process, strip every citizen of their human and democratic legal rights. Since stress is known to lower immunity, it is a medical fact that forcibly removing those testing positive for coronavirus from their homes and loved ones to be placed in total isolation and facing potentially deadly forced treatments can realistically cause what would have been a mild or symptomless COVID infection to reach its full potential. This is just one example of the numerous ways the bill has potential to cause very much harm than it claims to reduce. Because, you know, this is quite different from going into quarantine in a hospital, being taken away by the government because you've tested positive for a coronavirus, which could be a cold or any number of a strain of flu. That you know, unless they're testing you specifically for COVID-19, but they're not. They're testing for coronavirus and then assuming that you have COVID-19, and then you can be taken away in isolation, away from everybody, no contact with family, no rights to legal representation, forced to have treatments. If the treatments kill you, then the hospital's got no liability. Your body will be cremated without any consent or whatever from your family, because they're not allowed to go to a funeral, because they're not allowed to gather in more than 2. Clearly, Johnson PM's government do not have the vital medical knowledge required to assess and address an infectious disease, and according to the evidence herein, not even the legal competence to address that via their legislative directives. What the British public needs now is clarity and compassion within a world not only dealing with a new virus, but also a major financial collapse. Millions have lost jobs and businesses, stress levels have increased exponentially, and, as previously stated, this does have a dire impact on human immunity against all manner of infections and immune responses. This present government appears to believe that police and military operating under dictates of the coronavirus bill are the best ways to address both problems. A bill to be in operations for 2 years and reviewed every 6 months, with a view to implementing that bill indefinitely. We need to consider other less draconian approaches to both disease and economy. Iceland, unlike Western nations, refused to bail out the banks and therefore has not suffered the levels of austerity imposed in UK, and in fact their economy is strengthened via tightened regulations as a direct result. A unified population and a genuinely free media mean people are more reliably informed, and as a result are moved to act accordingly. Iceland began testing specifically for COVID-19 from February and has tested a greater proportion of their population than UK. Their findings are that 50% of those infected are asymptomatic, that means no symptoms, and the majority displaying only very mild symptoms. Iceland has not imposed a lockdown, though public gatherings have been limited to no more than 50 people. Due to stringent testing and quarantine, Iceland initially showed the highest number of recorded cases, and yet the lowest number of severe cases and mortality. Why? Could that have something to do with the superior and less stressful social and economic conditions? According to Iceland's findings today, and equally the fast emerging picture in UK, can COVID-19 truly be considered a pandemic, given that human responses appear to be no different to any other cold or flu coronavirus, in the sense that most display no or very mild symptoms, while the aged and those with lowered immunity and or known and unknown underlying illnesses succumb to the worst impacts? As countries around the world scramble to fight back the spread of coronavirus, Iceland is doing things a little differently from the rest, and the approach could have a much larger impact on our understanding of the virus, and I've left the link there. By today, it's clear that antiquated political, social and economic ideologies and agendas, be they far right or centrist right left, are inappropriate, and in fact the ongoing battle between one side or the other often means facts and the solutions the facts support are denied as subversive, fascist or else communist. Is a National Health Service communist, or is it an institution of a democratic socio-capitalist society which seeks to satisfy the needs of both right and left? Certainly nations such as Norway and Sweden, where democratic socio-capitalism is the norm, are shown to record the highest levels of human well-being and happiness. Are the world's happiest countries better equipped to deal with the coronavirus? It appears they are. The current national and global economic and health concerns require a fundamental re-evaluation. Clearly Johnson's PM's government need expert balanced assistance. While some may judge the content herein as criticism, the fact is, exposing legal and medical anomalies and failures are a necessary task. One cannot successfully tackle a problem if one does not have a true understanding of the problem, and what is the point of a right and left if they're not going to unite towards a common objective of eradicating present imbalances and resulting afflictions? Burying embarrassing and damning social and economic problems via a heavily controlled media only serves to permit those to quietly fester to the point where the only solution is to enforce a police state in order to suppress unsavoury information and resulting actions that will undoubtedly demand major reform. Certainly we have witnessed a media psyop mechanism at work, whereby the unpopular PM states his plan to do nothing. The media then incites mass public alarm toward calling for the kind of measures then only imposed by China and Italy. I mean, since when did this country operate like China? And since when did Italy even operate like China? It is difficult to avoid what amounts to lawful suspicion that this pandemic is part of a globalist agenda designed to covertly satisfy their depopulation agendas, prohibit questions, information and mass public protests over 5G rollout and yet another banking collapse, now blamed on COVID-19. It was well understood among all economic pundits that this present financial collapse was long overdue. It appears that when it comes to New World Order ambitions, COVID-19 is the virus with all the gifts. While the globally corporate mainstream and equally controlled alternative medias attempt to confuse the issues of EMF damages to life via memeing ridiculous and fake narratives such as 5G causes COVID-19, clearly with a malicious intent to thereby crush all scientifically validated concerns about 5G as fake news. The reality is that the 5G grid, coupled with connections to smart meters in every home, is scientifically proven to impact immunity via EMF radiation. We have no reason to believe 5G is safe. Now this is from the Scientific American, okay? The Scientific American. We have no reason to believe 5G is safe. Numerous recent scientific publications have shown that EMF affects living organisms at levels well below most international and national guidelines. Effects include increased cancer risk, cellular stress, increase in harmful free radicals, genetic damages, structural and functional changes of the reproductive system, learning and memory deficits, neurological disorders, and negative impacts on general well-being in humans. Damage goes well beyond the human race, as there is growing evidence of harmful effects to both plant and animal life. the scientists who signed this appeal arguably constitute the majority of experts on the effects of non-ionising radiation. They have published more than 2,000 papers and letters on EMF in professional journals. That's from scientists. Who are you going to listen to? The BBC? The mainstream media? Politicians? They're rolling this out now. Switzerland halts rollout over 5G concerns. Oh, why would that be? This is from the Financial Times. Is Switzerland operating under the foolish idea that 5G is responsible for a viral infection? Or is Switzerland concerned about overall health risks to their populace and wildlife, as is confirmed via numerous scientific studies? The answer is clearly the latter, and it is with alarm we witness the levels of subterfuge in operation within the network of controlled medias, especially those commonly believed as alternative, but which are in fact established to deliver fake news, in order to detract from the genuinely important information as regularly delivered via genuine alternative news providers who base their news on trusted and factual sources. Major reform is the only solution. What this world and its political and professional classes need to realise is that such reforms do not have to be punitive against any particular class, faith, politics or culture, when we collectively understand the exponential benefits to our economies, societies and planet. Models presented by the Nordic nations stand as an important lesson to the world. The true pandemic afflicting this world is not a viral infection. It is a psychosexual disease attacking the children in every nation, because many of those afflicted are high-profile individuals involved in other criminal activities, such as use of illegal drugs, coupled with financial crimes and illegal trade in weapons, etc. Control over mainstream media is a vital component toward maintaining secrecy around sensitive issues, and while simultaneously protecting an inherently corrupt global elite who themselves, despite their immense wealth and power, fall victim to the same depressions and afflictions as befall their lower social orders. At some point we all need to accept that crime and criminals cannot be trusted nor relied on to positively address the myriad problems their crime has caused by one method or another. As developing human beings, children's safety and welfare is exceptionally important when we consider that today's children are the foundation for and future of UK society. Examining Johnson PM's bill in light of what is known in relation to individual and organised child abuse, opportunities for child abuse are immense, and we need to be very wary of any legislation that is fundamentally ignorant in terms of recognising the existing facts which indisputably expose the reality that professionals within every UK authority are known to have abused their powers to gain access to children. Certainly, the coronavirus bill provides ample, unrestricted opportunities for child abusers, and this is a deeply disturbing and very real concern. The same risks apply equally to women. All is confirmed within the United Nations Child Protection Committee report for Britain, July 2014. The committee is strongly concerned that thousands of children continue to be trafficked every year into the state party. I think that is London. Well, Britain. Particularly for sexual exploitation and labour. And it expresses its deepest concern about reports that hundreds of children have been abducted from their families in Africa and trafficked to the state party for brutal religious rituals, such as the so-called voodoo and juju rituals. The committee is particularly concerned that the number of prosecutions and convictions of perpetrators of trafficking and other offences covered by the optional protocol is extremely low across the state party, leading to impunity for perpetrators. That means free from arrest. And that the prosecutors often choose to charge perpetrators of human trafficking with other offences such as rape or abduction in order to secure convictions. Thousands of child sex abuse cases go unreported. Up to 400,000 cases of child sex abuses, child sex abuse behind closed doors, says Children's Commissioner, as Police Chief calls for a crackdown on internet pornography. Anne Longfield, the Children's Commissioner for England, found there had been 50,000 reported cases of sex abuse over the last 2 years, but estimated the true number was 400,000 to 450,000. Only 1 in 8 children who are sexually abused are identified by professionals. Children's Commissioner calls for urgent action to improve the prevention and early identification of child sexual abuse and the support provided to victims. A UK MP report into organised paedophilia states organised child sex abuse is widespread in England. MP said all councils across England now need to review child protection policies. Their report said, on the evidence we took, the alarming conclusion is that Rotherham was not an outlier, that there is widespread problem of organised child sexual exploitation in England. UK care system branded disgraceful over missing children. Analysis of data shared with Newsweek shows that according to the Department of Education statistics for the year ending March 31st, 2013, around 1,910 children, legally defined as under the age of 18, left the care system in England for unknown reasons, including 180 babies under the age of 1. In the same period in 2012, about 2,260 children left the care system for unknown reasons, including babies. You know, unknown reasons, that's not absconding, that's not going back home, that's not being adopted, it's just unknown, we don't know what's happened. They've just vanished from the social service records. 180 babies under the age of 1 vanish. 160 babies the year before. Like, how many babies disappear from care a year now? We cannot forget either risk against Britain's ethnic and religious minorities when factions of police, government and military are aligned with racist and extremist elitist agendas. Far-right Islamophobic Britain First has encouraged their membership to join Johnson's Tory party in order to provide security for his leadership. Forced cremations, for example, will cause immense distress among Muslims and Jews, whose faith requires burial and specific religious ceremonies. Indeed, most of Britain's society has specific cultural and religious customs in relation to honouring and burying their deceased. Tackling a new virus should not mean such customs are rendered obsolete. Given the powers made available to any extremist employed within UK police and security services relied on to enforce the coronavirus bill, it does not require a mathematician to note the exponential risk that some will abuse their powers toward persecution against religious and ethnic minorities. The Office of Governance does need to take everything and everyone into account when it comes to devising a parliamentary bill. Johnson's bill is here shown to be largely ignorant of prevailing crime, corruption and risks against minority, vulnerable and or commonly oppressed social groups. Indeed, the bill does appear to not only protect high-profile criminals, but also handing those even greater liberty to commit crime with impunity. On the other hand, when it comes to the average non-extremist UK citizen, Johnson PM's coronavirus bill typically as with drug prohibition, creates crime and criminals in that individuals going about what was previously their normal daily work and leisure activities within their rights as generally peaceful and law-abiding citizens may now be judged criminal and fined, prosecuted, or imprisoned without trial. At what point does Britain cease to be recognised as a democracy, if not at the point when our government decides to prohibit all criticism of its errors and fascistic policies indefinitely, and with its powers to kill thousands by a power of a House of Commons coronavirus bill, allegedly devised to protect our health? Surely a well-equipped and staffed NHS was established in UK to do that. Mass incarceration and death are not the answer. The too many people trope needs to be recognised as a false narrative supporting a eugenist ideology, along with the notion that humanity needs to exist under strict control, implemented via an alleged superior self-professed elite. From a more balanced, informed perspective, what we actually have now is a wealth of humanity with unlimited potential for positively addressing and erasing a majority of problems we currently face, and which include issues such as climate change and child development. It is a known fact that in every nation where women have rights, education, contraception and opportunity, birth rates rapidly fall, and while this does mean initially an ageing population within this, present and the next generation, the fact is the numbers between young and aged will inevitably reach a favourable balance. Since ageing is a natural aspect of life on Earth, the most positive way is to accept that benefits of the elderly far outweigh the alleged disadvantages in terms of social and economic sustainability. For a start, healthier lifestyles and diet are crucial. An ageing population does not need to be an inactive, unhealthy or non-productive entity, and indeed the elderly embody an important living historical record of life experience and wisdom, which are essential to the younger generation. Certainly, the relatively stress-free conditions within democratic socio-capitalism, coupled with a balanced economy, rights and a free press, are known to promote longer and healthier lifespans. Present global agendas, however, are known to perceive the elderly as posing a pandemic risk against economy, minus any regards to the fact that the elderly commonly provide immense resource via assistance to the younger generation as parents and grandparents. It is fair to say that without assistance from elderly relatives, many young adults would suffer decreased capacity to survive independently, and with ever-increasing numbers becoming reliant on state assistance. Therefore, the objectives exposed by the memo as shared below, which is this one, are inherently imbalanced. While some may claim this leaked memo is a hoax/fake news, Dr. Margaret Morgenroth-Hewlett, as a highly acclaimed and academically accredited individual, cannot be described as the kind of person who would put her name to a hoax document. The narrative therein cannot be casually dismissed, and surely needs taking into account in terms of assessing the true nature behind current political, economic and social agendas, such as those embodied within the Tory-created coronavirus bill. And I did have that link up, but this is it. For your eyes only, from the coalition. Okay. That's it. And this is what she said. Old people live too long, and this is a risk for the global economy. We must do something urgently. And when you read that memo, she gives all the advice about what needs to be done. And it's serious, people, and it is a conspiracy, because this is what they were discussing at Davos in 2017 either 2017 or 2018. I suspect it was 2017, though it could have been 2016, it's just not clear. As a species, we either embrace the innate and natural compassion as is commonly found within every sphere of human culture, religion and society, and incorporate that into every aspect of governance, or else we silently submit to a minority narcissistic psychopathic governance by a people who perceive compassion as a weakness, leading to disorder and ultimately Soviet-style communism, despite the fact that Soviet-style communism is precisely what globalist agendas appear to be intent on establishing via centralised corporate control over every nation. Our collective compassion needs to extend equally to those commonly perceived as enemy by non-extremists dedicated to compassionate living. An amnesty is required in order to liberate those who have, for whatever reason, fallen victim to following criminal ambitions, coercion, and/or are unwitting servants to corrupted objectives, inasmuch as such individuals are rendered entirely unaware of the reality that those objectives are inherently ignorant, and therefore are doomed to worsening the very problems their methods claim will be resolved. It is no one's fault to be rendered mystified in a world of confusion and traditionally unquestioned privilege. Mystification is not ignorance. As Jesus said, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." Johnson's bill is dangerous, very much more dangerous than COVID-19. It projects a forecast of repression, oppression and depression far into the future. Considering that bill is established purely on dealing with a new virus, which natural human immunity will eventually learn to fight and manage below pandemic proportions, as is already proven among the Icelandic population, the bill is both extreme and unnecessary, as too are the proposals for forced vaccinations. Whenever the proposed COVID-19 vaccination appears, a vaccination delivered in a rush, minus the usual protocols required to determine the safety of that vaccination, there is a risk that whole populations being forcibly injected with an essentially experimental remedy will soon begin to exhibit an even greater pandemic via the proposed solution. Again, taking everything into account, we cannot ignore historical errors, failures and resulting risks toward increasing illness or disabilities inflicted via new medications and vaccine impacts which are often unrecognised until it's too late and the damage is done. And here we are with these are just a few examples and there's hundreds out there. Officials are trying to get to the bottom of how vaccine manufacturer Baxter International Incorporated made experimental virus material based on a human flu strain, but contaminated with the H5N1 avian flu virus, and then distributed it to an Austrian company. I mean, luckily, the company did not use that vaccination because they tested it to make sure it was safe, right? And that's what they found in it. Live avian flu virus. And this one, in Africa, more polio cases now caused by vaccine than by wild virus. The vaccine itself is harming people. And this, Guillain-Barré syndrome and flu vaccine. What causes GBS? The exact cause of GBS is unknown, but about 2/3 of people who develop GBS experience symptoms several days or weeks after they've been sick with diarrhea or a respiratory illness. Infection with the bacterium Campylobacter jejuni is one of the most common risk factors for GBS. People can also develop GBS after having the flu or other infections. On very rare occasions, they may develop GBS days or weeks after getting a vaccination. well, very rare occasions. In fact, in face of present day and historical knowledge, forced vaccination against a virus to which 50% of those infected exhibit no symptoms, and with only a minority of fatalities among the relative minority of those needing intensive care, inadequately tested new vaccines are definitely not the answer, and instead present risks as severe, if not more so, than the disease that vaccine is meant to prevent. All of the issues, facts, evidence and concerns expressed herein are of paramount importance, with far-reaching implications for every future generation. Hence it is of prime importance, and as a matter of utmost urgency, that UK professionals, as listed at the start of this document, take notice and move to act accordingly. Britain as a nation and humanity as a species is heading toward a precipice of eternal doom and gloom, leading ultimately to our own extinction, as well as ongoing depletion of life on our planet in general, as one pandemic leads to another, and only because we have collectively endeavoured to treat the symptoms rather than the underlying cause of disease, such as, e.g., industrialised animal farming, along with production and consumption of animal products. As stated previously, vastly reducing our consumption of sugar and increasing vitamin C and also vitamin D3, which is necessary for the body's absorption of vitamin C, will dramatically improve natural resistance to all viral infections. Lack of vitamin D3 and associated minimised absorption of vitamin C, coupled with a high sugar diet, are very likely why the black population of USA are suffering a statistically proven greater impact of the worst symptoms via COVID-19. Included in this result are the levels of poverty and resulting stress the USA black population are traditionally and presently experiencing, in terms also of racial inequality and what amounts to state-enforced persecution. Darker skin colour is a known cause of lowered vitamin D3 in countries where climate is not conducive to maintaining healthy levels of human vitamin D3 absorption via the natural sunlight levels darker skin colours have evolved to thrive under. The pandemic seems to be hitting people of colour the hardest. In Michigan, black Americans comprise 14.1% of the state population, but an ungodly 40% of coronavirus deaths in Washtenaw County, home to Ann Arbor. 48% of residents hospitalised with coronavirus are black, though black people make up only 11% of the county. And again, they're talking about coronavirus. Do they mean coronavirus flu, which does kill people, as we've seen previously, or do they mean COVID-19? But regardless of that, people of colour are getting hit by these viruses far worse than white people. And well, the evidence shows that that is very likely related to the fact they're not getting enough vitamin D3, which is needed to absorb vitamin C, and they're not getting, and they're eating sugar, a high sugar Western diet that then is depleting vitamin C in their white blood cells, depleting their immunity, and so that's why they are getting it worse. Plus, they are living under immense stress in essentially what is a racist country. All such evidence does need now to be professionally accepted as valid, and we do need to learn from such evidence in order to arrive at the most appropriate and genuinely successful courses of action for the purpose of not only addressing the impacts of COVID-19 but also toward improving humanity's health generally. The truth is, there is too much waste in this world, and that includes waste of knowledge, experience and wisdom, along with human lives and potential. In this sense, the democratic socio-capitalist approach, combining both left and right interests within social and economic systems, which do not negatively judge and discriminate against people on grounds of age, race, religion, class or gender, are shown to be the most successful in raising a fair and balanced human consciousness, and in achieving those ends, education and a genuinely free media are key. We have witnessed how the power of media has inspired mass lockdowns throughout the world and even calls for martial law, as well as covertly facilitating the draconian measures as proposed by Johnson's coronavirus bill. Therefore, we can be in no doubt that a media liberated to focus on facts as opposed to publishing propaganda can and will have same powers of influence toward encouraging more balanced and humane social responses. It is the professional classes who are called upon now to take the lead in this ongoing informational battle by engaging in necessary discourse which both informs and challenges current proposals and agendas. COVID-19 heralds a tremendous turning point within the human world, and which way we choose to turn will determine whether a heavenly or hellish future, either a heavenly or hellish future existence for billions of people and the life of our planet. And choice is the prime point of importance here. Who is making the choices for us? And are those choosers making the right choices? Every problem brings with it an opportunity for improvement, or else the problem will increase, while all opportunity for vital change is dramatically decreased until the point of no return. Our collective decisions need to be based on solid foundations of law, facts, evidence and wisdom. Our human world and our planet are presently rendered extremely fragile and left vulnerable to the very worst ambitions devised by the very worst aspects of human consciousness. A consciousness traditionally established on historical faith in agendas which themselves were established within then seemingly rational beliefs based on what we now know as misunderstanding, abuses of power and misinterpretations in relation to ourselves as a species and our true place among the splendour of life on earth. If we cannot learn from the lessons of history, what is the point of that history? Why bother keeping records and teaching those to future generations if actually we have no need for any such education? The point is, we do need to learn from past and updated studies, experience and associated outcomes precisely when addressing the issues we are challenged with today. Are we facing a deadly pandemic, or are we not now invited to step up to a higher level of existence and consciousness? Humanity is thoroughly aware we need drastic change, and it is not humanity standing against eco-technology, organic food and sustainably healthy living. It is not humanity destroying Earth's natural resources and poisoning our Pacific Ocean with nuclear radiation. All of the above is by the will of those same corporate interests who have traditionally ridden roughshod over the environmentally friendly native populations of every land, and only now to claim there are too many people. The only thing there are too many of on this planet are lawless entities and privileged groups who know full well that positive change for the many and our planet demands a fair and balanced economy, strict financial and industrial regulations, and also a justice system which does not discriminate according to e.g. wealth and social status. Since change is coming whether we like it or not, it seems the people of this generation are required to arrive at a judgment on the issues of right and wrong, law and crime, and why we need to progress with a spirit of unity in honour of all that it is that makes us most truly human. The greatest weight of responsibility inevitably falls therefore onto the shoulders of those now positioned with most power of social credibility and influence to challenge prevailing negative or suspect directives and simultaneously support the numerous positive solutions. Were we created to be like a devil, or were we not created to be like God? And what would God do in face of all the issues as highlighted herein when dealing too with a new and life-threatening virus? Johnson PM's coronavirus bill or the Icelandic model? It's time we made up our minds about who we are and where we stand and what we hope to leave for our children's children's children.